Hello, everyone, and welcome to Channel Pro Stack Up, the show where MSP and IT integrators up their stack by learning how solutions stack up. But sometimes improving your stack isn't about adding another tool. Sometimes it's about figuring out whether you have too many of them. Consolidation promises fewer vendors, fewer consoles, and less complexity. But when does it actually make an MSP more efficient? And when are you just trading one set of problems for another? Joining me today is Chris Moores, Head of Pre-Sales, MSP Platform for the US at Proofpoint, to talk about when consolidation makes sense, where it can deliver real operational and security benefits, and when MSP should think twice before putting too many eggs in one vendor's basket. So, Chris, it's great to have you on. Please tell us a little bit about you and a little bit more about Hornet Security by Proofpoint.
Yeah. First of all, Matt, thanks for having me here. I really appreciate it. So as you said, Chris Moores, I'm with Proofpoint. I've been with Proofpoint for about 20 years. The past 12, 13, 14 years has been on the MSP side of the business. So for a long time, I've been knee deep in the needs and the wants and trying to solve problems for MSPs. So really excited to be here with you and talk about consolidation. That's obviously a big story that we're bringing to market. Last year, Proofpoint acquired Hornet Security, a leading cybersecurity vendor in Europe, to combine it with its own sort of detection strength and platform to launch Proofpoint 365 Total Protection. So yeah, happy to be with you and looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and dive in. And I think before we get too up much into the weeds, it would probably be a good idea to actually define what we mean by consolidation. So I'll start just with that basic question. What does consolidation actually mean for an MSP today? Is it fewer vendors? Is it fewer products? Is it fewer consoles? Fewer invoice? Like what does it mean?
All of the above, right? Ultimately, MSPs have brought a lot of products into their environment to service the needs of their customers. Everything from email security, from backup, endpoint security awareness, and many more. And with that, initially when MSPs start out, often they look for sort of the best of breed vendors. So they might have a number of vendors servicing each of these different needs. And a number of vendors means number of consoles, training, invoices, expertise, kind of gets spread out and spread out and spread out. You have this sort of sprawl because every time a customer brings you this need, you're like, oh, well, I'll solve this problem for you and all my other customers. So you end up with too much. Now, ultimately, it's sort of consolidation isn't you don't look at consolidation for the sake of consolidating. It's basically you're trying to find operational efficiencies where it makes sense uh, to maybe have one console. That could be improvement. Or hey, if I have one vendor, it means I'm getting one invoice, right? As opposed to six invoices. So it can mean many things to different to many people, but I think everything you just mentioned is at play, right? The more you can do to reduce the complexity of the environment, the operational total cost of ownership, the better for you, the MSP, because your margins are tight, right? So anything you can do to save on that is a good thing.
So it sounds like the goal is is more about consolidating workflows rather than
Mhm.
products, right? And
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
do you
And that,
think
I
that
mean,
an MSP can like technically have a lot of products, but still have a well consolidated operating model?
yes. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, it depends on the product itself, right? So there's lots of great vendor products out there that have, strong, consoles, strong support, easy to use. And if that's working, that's great. But not everyone is built that way. So the more that can kind of spread out, the more difficult it can be. But certainly if you're an organization, you're an MSP and you have strong relationships with several vendors, and you have and I'll call it that sort of operational total cost of ownership, and that's fairly strong, great, right? You're doing everything fine. But that's generally not the case, right? So it's more about understanding what your needs are, understanding the stack you want to bring to your customers, looking at those relationships and going, hey, there might be a few that are Sort of similar, or I'll give you an example. So Microsoft 365, naturally core component to many MSPs from their offering. And Microsoft 365, when you think about email and collaboration, you're thinking about email security, you're thinking about backup, maybe you're thinking about DMARC because you're in the space of email, maybe you're thinking of security awareness. Well, five vendors that are all helping you with your Microsoft 365 sort of management might be a little much. That might be an area where they're all sufficiently commoditized where bringing them together in one platform that all speak to the same Microsoft tenant, that pull all the right information out, that could be an area where it does make sense, where consolidation does make sense. But other products can exist outside of that because they're dealing with more specialized functions.
We've talked for years about best of breed technology, and you kind of hit on it right there. Like you end up trying to add the best of breed, and then you end up with five products, dealing with your Microsoft 365 tenant. What has changed recently that has made consolidation such a big conversation now? Like has tool sprawl just simply reached a breaking point for MSPs?
I think it certainly seems to have hit that point, right? Like, there's a reason why it's a topic of conversation. It's a topic of conversation when we talk to MSPs, and I know other vendors out in the space are having the same conversation. They're talking about this. And there's certainly enough surveys out there with feedback coming from SPs saying yes, right? It's too much, right? Like I'm having a hard time getting talent. I'm having a hard time reacting to all the various needs that my customers have. The tools themselves, each of these vendors are trying to expand and service more needs. So I think, yeah, I think we've hit this point where it's a constant, steady talk track everywhere, which is why people are kind of curious to sort of go, hey, how should I approach this? What should I be thinking of? It shouldn't, again, I mentioned this earlier, it shouldn't be consolidation for the sake of consolidation, right? It has to make sense. And there's two sort of arguments you can or frameworks. Number one is the security mindset, right? Which is if I have, handing off from one product to another can create a gap, right? So therefore, well, the gaps means that there's a problem and something can get through. But if I can share telemetry, have a single console, and sort of build intelligence across these different things, then I can reduce those gaps and I can help from a security perspective. But there's also the financial argument, right? The economic argument, I should say, right? Which is I have to train, I have to deal with different support staffs, I have to get five different bills. Those are two ways you can look at should I consolidate or not consolidate? Ultimately, if you're not improving your economic footprint and you're not still ensuring you're maintaining your security footprint, then consolidation is not going to serve you any, it's not going to benefit you at all.
So, how would an MSP who maybe doesn't understand that they have a problem with sprawl, like how do they know when it's become a real problem for them? What are the symptoms that they should look for?
Yeah, well, good question. Certainly, if they're measuring response time to deal with support incidents, that would be one area. Just looking at, again, support volume, incidents where, a breach incident or any of those things, looking at that at an individual customer level and then aggregating that back would be a good sign. Also, how much time are your resources spending? Just dealing with the operational costs. Like, again, if you go back to the idea that, hey, hiring good talent is difficult and you have to pay that talent. Therefore, your margins are quite tight. Wouldn't you rather have those resources focused on more, higher value services? Well, if you're struggling to just deal with the day-to-day operational tickets that come in, that would be a good sign, right? And also usage, right? What's the key? I think every MSP should have a core stack of these are the key services I have to have for my customers. And it's probably something like EDR, email security, backup, and a few other ones, right? Those are core capabilities. Now, over the past few years, maybe you've brought on this and you've brought on identity. That makes sense now. But take a step back, and it's always good to do is going, well, what do I really need? And in fact, actually, good point. I did actually a webinar yesterday, and it was talking about really around getting value from your security stack. And often, what MSPs will do, they'll just lump it all into one cost and say, here you go. And it's hard to show value. It's hard to show, here are all the things I'm doing. And I was sort of putting out there that maybe you need a bronze, a silver, and a gold security offering. So that way the customer can say, oh, I want silver. I'm going to get all these things, but I don't really care about that. Well, that allows you, again, to make sure that you're bringing the right products for that customer without giving everyone everything, which they may not truly need because they don't have maybe they're in a different vertical or whatever it might be. They may not really need it. So all of those things are good. Taking stock of what you have, looking at your tickets, the operational side of things, thinking how you price for all those, and then stepping back. As there's no magic number, right? Oh, I have 10 or I have 6 or there's no magic number because if you have 10 and you have a strong operational model to deliver those 10 and you're delivering to specialized verticals needed, then 10 is the right number. But if all of those areas, too many tickets, people don't have time for anything, you can invest in some of these more value add services. You have all sorts of support tickets with all sorts of vendors. Well, then maybe you've got to that point where you need to take stock and maybe you have too many vendors.
So MSPs are often told that consolidation is a way to improve margin, but how should they actually calculate that instead of just taking a vendor's word for it?
Uh, Good one. Very, very good question. So ultimately, you're 100% right. But I think often, and I hear it all the time, it's license cost, right? It's like, what do you charge for this versus what does this vendor charge? But instead of asking, is product A cheaper than product B, better ask, like, what is actually going to cost me to deliver that service to 100 customers? And then all of a sudden you think about the bigger picture. You think about training, right? You think about support. You think about the other sort of economic, the invoicing and billing side of things. That's the real thing that I think MSPs should look at. And often they just look at one or the other. Oh, this is, they're 20% cheaper. Can you meet that price? But it's the bigger thing. If it might be 20% more expensive, but this is if you can bring this vendor and this vendor and this vendor into this one console, well, guess what you've just done? You've dramatically reduced your operational costs because you've consolidated to a vendor. So I think it's just making sure that as an MSP asking those questions, it's not is product A cheaper than product B? It's what's it cost me to deliver that service to 100 of my customers? I think the moment you think about that, you start to open up to all the things that are involved in bringing the service to market, not just what you're going to invoice the customer and what you're going to be invoiced.
Yeah, it comes down to something I've been writing a lot about recently, which is operational maturity.
Yeah.
Like if you're not tracking those numbers and those metrics, you need to,
You don't
right?
know. Yeah,
Because
you will never know. You will never, you can't ask that very question, right? Like, how should I know if I have too many vendors and I've just sprawl like the sprawl? How could you possibly know that unless you have the data, right? Otherwise, it's a feel, right? I don't really, every time I reach there, they're always too busy. There's too many issues going on. So good advice would be to take a step back and start thinking about, am I measuring this? Am I tracking this information? Because if I'm not, how can I even answer that question? So start thinking about how you capture that. And then you can literally see it week to week and month to month and quarter over quarter, right? Hey, this is going up. I have a problem here. What can that's eating into my margins. What can I start to do to address that? And that's when maybe consolidation is one of those. It's not necessarily the only thing, but maybe that's where you can go, hey, I have too many services that are somewhat complementary, and I have 5 different vendors servicing those. That's creating some operational headaches for the team. I should take a look at that. And that's a great way to segue into, well, let me go and look and see what the vendor landscape looks like now. And again, hopefully, Proofpoint Total Protection is one that would look at if it meets those needs. But that should be the starting point.
So let's move that into that realm of thinking then. So and think about it from a security perspective. Does
Mhm.
consolidating really improve security, or does it just primarily improve operations?
Uh, so first of all, it should improve security, right? If I can share telemetry between these products, if I can have better contacts, right? Not just the email, but also the identity and where they logged in from and what device were they on. Um, I can create simpler workflows to connect the dots. It's not about fewer consoles. It's really more telemetry and workflows. And then I can investigate faster because I don't need to go to 4 or 5 different places to get the context. I go to one place and I get the context and I can react. So 100%. And it goes back to those sort of two framing, the economic framing and the security framing, right? If you're not improving your security posture, right? Then then maybe there's no benefit. And the sort of the objective, of course, would be to do that. If I have less consoles, if I can share telemetry between my email and my backup and my endpoint, well, and now I have one place to see all that telemetry to take action, that's good. And then the other one being economics, right? Well, now I don't have to train them on 3 or 4 different products, right? So I think both the economic and security argument have to be looked at closely, and the MSP should benefit in both areas if they've done it right.
Yeah, so if you put together five genuinely excellent, security products and integrated them properly, it may not necessarily be automatically more
Yeah,
secure,
yeah,
right? But those efficiency gains you're saying can help with security because you can react faster
that's right.
and things won't fall between the cracks.
Yeah, because there's a lot of MSPs who are extremely sophisticated and they've built all of this additional sort of intelligence infrastructure to consume and deal with all the vendor stacks that they're using. And that's great, right? They've addressed their own operational the challenges themselves by investing. And if that's working, great, right? Uh, Now you could say, well, that's going to require you to continue to invest and improve and troubleshoot. And what happens when a new one comes into play and you have to reuse it? So you could say, from a future perspective, maybe there's a vendor out there that sort of bring all that together and I can get some improvements, right? But that's more of a long-term play. But yes, if an MSP has done all that and it's working, great. The other piece of that could be the economic piece, right? The economic piece could be another sort of area to go after. But hey, if it's working, it's working. But the reality is it's not working for a lot of MSPs, right? Especially you mentioned sort of operational maturity. Depends on where you are. If you're not as mature operationally, then this might be a really great conversation to listen to and to start doing some investigation. If you anticipated this years ago as you were bringing more vendors on, and then you had the resources to build the necessary tooling and infrastructure to manage that. Great, you've already done it. You're ahead of the game. No worries, right? Like then keep doing what you're doing. You've obviously done a great job.
So let's look at the other extreme. When does consolidation go too far?
Well, that's a really good question, and absolutely factors anyone thinking about this should be thinking about the risks, the downside, right? So an example that we hear a lot would be, "Hey, I've been told all along that I should have multiple vendors because if one vendor goes down, right, I have these other levers I can pull." So vendor concentration is a risk. A major outage could or compromise could cause that's certainly fair, and I think it's important as you're talking to the vendors, usually you'd ask them about their policies and processes for continuity and disaster recovery. What are they doing to ensure that? So that should be a concern. I think over the past 10 years, vendors like Proofpoint have invested heavily in that area to make sure that we address those concerns. Also, the best of suite versus best of breed, right? Certainly, when you move to sort of a consolidated strategy, if there is a product or service that you absolutely need the best of breed, then you should maintain that, right? Because it could be that best of suite works for most areas, but in this particular case, I have a certain set of customer types that really require this, and I need every bell and every whistle. That's okay. That's fundamental. You should keep that. You should be able to have still a blend of vendors if your need is there. Lock-in is another one. People are like, hey, if I've got all my eggs in the basket of you, I'm kind of like I'm held up. I mean, I think that's a bit of a fallacy. Anyone could leave if they want to leave, right? You can, no one should be able to lock you in. But certainly, vendors like Proofpoint are going to do everything to keep your business, right? By adding more products and more capabilities and more features to keep you there. And then also reduced, if every MSP is buying the same stack by the same vendor, then how do you differentiate? Like, how do you, like, what are you bringing to the table that everybody else is? Well, in my sense, that's really where MSPs should be thriving, right? The service layer. It's not about the products, right? Everyone can bring the same products. And everyone can be buying from Proofpoint, for example. But what differentiates one MSP over the other is what's your service layer, right? What are you doing? Maybe it's your I don't know, maybe you're doing compelling reports, compelling updates. Maybe you have some sort of a CISO engagement. Maybe you have a greater, a really short response time. Maybe, who knows? But you're bringing your secret sauce on top of all these products. So yes, there are concerns, and I don't think any MSP should walk blindly and just say, I'm going to call it consolidate for the sake of consolidation. No, you should be thinking about all these things. But I think, generally speaking, and I just to tie it back into Proofpoint, we're not necessarily trying to be all things to all MSPs. We really, really hone in on Microsoft 365 in terms of email and collaboration, right? So that's why our product seat's very, very tailored there because we think it makes sense. There's so much operational gains by having, one platform, one vendor connect to the tenant and sort of have all access to all that. But that doesn't mean we're going to try and do it all. There are going to be other vendors out there that do certain things that are very important to you, and that's fine, right? Again, it's not about one vendor. It's just about the right vendors that maximize the products and services you need to support your customers.
You talk about one vendor, and there's some concentration of risk the more you consolidate down into one vendor.
Mhm.
And take backup as kind of an example. Like just putting security and backup into the same platform create a philosophical problem.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. And again, maybe it comes down to how the vendor achieves both, right? Like, what is the architectural approach to sort of separating certain elements of the security layer from the backup layer, or the email security layer from the backup layer? But certainly from all, that is not necessarily something I've thought a lot about or heard a lot of feedback on. But there are going to be, you're right to call out that, hey, if I put all my eggs in the proverbial, basket, are there additional risks that I need to think about? And the answer is yes. You should think about what those risks are, because those are real. But in the end, I think that's where, if I take this back again to Microsoft, hey, you're already using Microsoft, right? You've already made that decision. Guess what's there? Everything is there, right? The users are there. Some sort of OneDrive and SharePoint are full of all the files and documents. Maybe you're backing up Microsoft. Maybe you're using a third-party backup. All the identities managed there. So you're already kind of aggressively invested in Microsoft for some of these key services. I'm not really seeing a concern where, as long as we're talking about that Microsoft suite, having another vendor in doing those same things hasn't necessarily created any concerns around risk or concerns there. So yeah, so I think that one is less of a concern when we're talking about the sort of Microsoft suite.
So 365 total protection puts a lot of things into one platform. What did you deliberately choose to bring together, and why do those particular capabilities all belong in one platform?
Yeah, good question. Ultimately, we focused on I mean, it's right in the name, 365. So how are organizations today leveraging Microsoft 365? So email, the core of everything is email. And perhaps other collaboration, which would be something like Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, Outlook, in terms of a tool. And so as you think about email and compliance and data, you start to see, well, hey, these are all kind of part of the ecosystem of day-to-day use for an average user, right? I send email, I get email, I communicate to Teams, I create something and I store it on OneDrive and I share it out and I use Outlook. So now, if you apply that to our focus, so core, of course, email security and backup. We don't think Microsoft goes as far from a backup perspective as they should. So therefore, we have a backup. But as you get beyond that, we've done things like security awareness, right? Again, security, Microsoft doesn't do security awareness, but it's part of an understanding of how you interact with email. So security awareness, we would say, is key. So that's in there. Um, and then something that has also emerged, and this one's a little bit more recently, but it gets more into sort of compliance and governance, and goes back to when I was talking about SharePoint and OneDrives. If you imagine how much in a week do you create a new document? And do you, again, if you're using Microsoft 365, but wherever, you create a new document, you put it on your OneDrive, and then you share it out. Now imagine you're a company of 100 people and you're doing that, right? And everyone's giving their own permissions to it. Maybe even they're sharing it externally. Well, it's real, like, again, that is very much part of the Microsoft 365 story. Microsoft's made it so easy to do that, but they haven't really provided any sort of governance over that, right? So as we look at problems, that's a problem. That's a problem that, do you know, as an organization, do you know what files are shared and what's out there? Most of them will say no, right? Um, Now, maybe that's not a problem. Maybe it is. But imagine now, of course, we haven't talked about AI, but imagine everyone is using Copilot and they're using Copilot to do all sorts of different things. And Copilot has access to all of those files that I have created and stored and shared. And Copilot doesn't know what it has permission to or what doesn't. It just has access to sort of anything that would be publicly available. So now you have a big risk because I, as an employee, can say, "Hey, show me this information," and it might be pulling from files that I have no business accessing, but they weren't shared properly. So again, that's a relatively new sort of past couple of years capability that Hornet Security brought to market and now is part of Proofpoint Total Protection. That builds off that same idea, right? How are people using and interacting with Microsoft 365? What value how can we help with that? So that's driving a lot of the tools. And then you go beyond that, we have some DMARC management tools. Again, anything to do with email, right? If you want to archive email for some sort of a requirement, whether it's compliance, then we have an archive offering. If you want to send sensitive emails out, or encrypt emails because they contain protect health information. Again, you can use capabilities in Microsoft, or you might find tools that Proofpoint or other vendors find easier. So a lot of our focus and what does that journey look like? What are the tools they use? And then how can we help with that? Again, very much tailored to the Microsoft 365 platform.
So if I were an MSP that was currently using all these separate products for email security and backup and awareness training,
Yeah.
and 365 management, how would you recommend I approach consolidation? Is it are you seeing it? Is it better to rip and replace? Is it better to start with one workload to move customers as contracts expire? What's the right approach?
Yeah, that well, it depends on what your motivation is. So my motivation is what's right for the MSP, not what's right for the vendor, right? Certainly we believe we are, again, I can only speak for Proofpoint. We believe we built a strong platform that meets the core needs across all of these product areas I just mentioned. But the approach of what an MSP, how they might do this, will depend. Certainly, I can see. Let's get comfortable before I jump in. So, email security, if I take that one as maybe the baseline, right? That has the most maturity. It's been around for multiple decades. People understand it. It's pretty straightforward. So start by testing and maybe utilizing email security. Now, once you're using email security and you're on the platform and you're using it, you can go, okay, this is great. Well, of course, now that I'm here, right, I'm going to start testing some of these other elements. I want to get a feel for them before I know they're the right products I can take to my customer. So, certainly eat. What's the expression? Eat your own dog food, right? Like use our products, right? Turn on security awareness, do backup, use what I just mentioned, which is called permission manager, by the way, right? So use them, and then you see the benefit. You've got all the access to the control panel. You've everything's in place. Now you can start bringing it out to your customer base. Of course, they might have contract with their vendors. Nothing's ever easy, right? Hey, my renewal with this vendor is coming up. That's fine. There's probably a way to sort of tie that event up. And hey, if my renewal for my backup is, July 2027, well, maybe I'll spend between now and then getting on the system, getting email security going, testing it out so I can start to get that and, moving along. So there is no, Matt, there's no one size fits all. Some will jump in. I've had a conversation with one MSP recently who was like, this is great. I can get rid of this vendor for DMARC. I can get rid of this vendor. And he was ready to jump in completely. My guess is he's on the smaller side, right? Right? Where he can be a little more nimble. He believes the story, which is great. And he's at a certain stage where he can move very quickly. Others are going to be a little more cautious. They're probably going to start with email security, get some comfort there, and build from it. But there's, whatever makes sense to make sure that there's no, they don't want to sort of deliver a diminished service for the customer base, right? So they're going to have to do what makes sense for them. But again, speaking about Proofpoint, we make that easy. You can come onto the platform, try email security, try everything. And then once you have a sense of how it all works and you've trained your staff and you understand everything, then you can work with us and we can have a plan on how you can start bringing other ones over if you choose to. Again, some might say, I love your email security, but I really love this other vendor doing security awareness, right? Again, that's okay, right? So get on the platform and get to know it and use it, and then you'll have a better idea of how you can bring that to your customers.
It's an interesting meta example here because Hornet Security itself is now part of Proofpoint. So
Yep.
like you are an example of vendor consolidation, right? But and MSPs are dealing with vendor consolidation every time they turn around. What are some of the things that they can learn from the vendor consolidation when they're evaluating their own technology consolidation?
Well, yes, so certainly vendors are consolidating. Yes, Proofpoint acquired Hornet Security last year, and it doesn't take much to know a number of other vendor names who have consolidated over the years. And I think if you asked MSPs, they would probably say, "Can you stop? Can you just? I just want you as you are. I don't want it to change. I've got it working with you." But they also probably appreciate that the industry is growing. There's tons of investment. There's new ways of doing things. There's lots of smaller sort of vendors who are bringing interesting ways of doing things to the market. So it's gonna be a fact of life. We have tried to. We've spoken to our MSPs. How should we do this? What kind of timing do you need? We wanted to make sure we were clear on, hey, the product that you've been using before is still there, still fine. We're gonna help sort of bring you along this new journey. So it's hard. So we've tried to be thoughtful about our approach. We've looked at examples in the market where people have done a great job with this, and we've looked at examples where people have not done a great job. And so our choice was go speak to a lot of our MSPs, get their feedback, which has ultimately sort of determined how we would approach this to as best we can, right? There are all sorts of factors that are at play here. So yeah, it's a fact of life. Everyone's going to if you're using a vendor today, odds are in the next few years this will come to you, and all you can do is hopefully you're working with a vendor who will be transparent, tell you what they're doing, tell you why. And then also something we are doing is we're building some tools to migrate the data that you would have in our sort of legacy product, right? A product that is in the market today. Legacy is even the wrong word to use, right? It's a product in the market today. But we're investing in total protection. So we've brought to market tools to make it easy for an MSP to move data that's over here into the new platform and then flourish, right? Take advantage of some of the capabilities. So just hopefully as MSPs are looking at this, just if you face it, hopefully your vendors are being transparent. Hopefully they're thinking about make it easy on you. Hopefully they're building migration tools, whatever the scenario fits. That's certainly something we tried to do with this acquisition of Proofpoint and Hornet Security.
Yeah, it sounds like you're trying to be thoughtful and keep it still kind of, retain the simplicity while it adds a lot more
Yes,
functionality.
exactly, right? Because that's we believe like there's a reason why Proofpoint acquired Hornet Security. Hornet Security is a tremendous product in the European market, not as well known in the US and Canada, but a significant presence outside of there. Um, and guess what? Not just email security, but a really strong security awareness offering, a great backup technology, and all sorts of really great things. Well, those were capabilities that weren't available to Proofpoint's sort of MSP customers before that acquisition. So now with the acquisition there, you get still Proofpoint's strength in terms of detection, but you also get all these other capabilities, right? So it was pretty exciting for us to see how our product portfolio would expand greatly, which has also precipitated this entire conversation we're having, right? Which is when you're talking about one product, well, you're a vendor with a product, that's fine. Well, now when you're a vendor with five or six or seven or eight products, the consolidation story is there. So now we really have to make sure we're conscientious about this conversation, this topic. What are the factors? So we can help our MSP, our partners, make those decisions and help them along their way. And hopefully, it will be continuing to be with Proofpoint in our new 365 total protection platform.
So, Chris, the time flies, and we're we're just about out of time. But I want to hit you with one more question. It might be a bigger one, so you might have to think about this for a second. So, 5 years from now, do you think that the typical successful MSP will have dramatically fewer vendors in its stack, or do you believe that AI and APIs and better automation will make the number of vendors in a stack largely irrelevant?
Great question. I think I'll just jump right in rather than taking time to pause. And I would say certainly the biggest promise that from an AI perspective, and there are many promises, but specifically with all of the vendors invested heavily in this area, including Proofpoint, the promise of agentic. Um, it may somewhat, and time will tell, but as long as the products are built in such a way that, and this is not a guarantee, but as long as the products are built in such a way that the intelligence, the information is accessible, then I would imagine it's not hard to imagine that AI will allow uh, correlation across different products to react, right? When it's not a human who has to go to console and console and console and console, and that's being consumed in such a way agnostically, so that an agent can code a pick through that. That will change the game. However, I don't know how vendors will approach this, right? So some vendors will probably keep the system somewhat closed to a degree because there's a lot of intelligence there. So um, well, time will tell, but I would say we'll see a lot of improvements in there, so that it probably helps. AI will help, whether it's 5 or 10, right? It'll probably make it easier operationally to manage all these things because you've got another level of intelligence operating. But I don't think it'll be as open as that, and therefore you will still have some ecosystems a little bit closed off, and therefore the value. Again, of course, also everyone's going to bring their own agents into the party, right? So it's hard to see exactly where there'll be this perfectly open system of everybody sharing data and agents kind of being able to work with that to help MSPs. I think it'll be a little bit down that path, but I think for the most part, what it will really do for the vendors who invest heavily, which I think is everyone, it'll mean that, and again, speaking for Proofpoint, it means that all of these various products that are doing different things, where it right now it kind of serves it up so a human can look at them and take action, that will likely go away where the agent will do all the correlation and everything, present it to the human to go, yep, this is good. I like this. Let me take action. So I think each individual vendor is going to have their own story of how they're leveraging this for their product suite. So it'll make the sort of vendor consolidate. It might be used as a tool to drive more consolidation, right? As opposed to create a world where every vendor speaks friendly to all of their agents and they all talk. I hope it's more like that, but it'll be probably somewhere in the middle.
So it's a great answer. And the best part is that we're gonna have to wait 5 years to find out if you were right or not.
Yes, yes.
So
And what do I know, right? Like that's the thing. 5 years is a lifetime.
it is a lot, especially with how rapid AI is evolving. Yeah,
Exactly,
it is a
right?
lifetime.
It's amazing. It's an amazing transformative era. It's certainly exciting. We think about it every day with all sorts of things that we are doing that are really interesting, and it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. 5 years, we shall see.
We shall see.
Yeah.
So it's customary here on Stack Up to give you 60 seconds to give us your elevator pitch on why you believe 365 Total Protection is the right choice for our MSP viewing audience to up their stack.
Okay, well, I was not aware of that, so I'm just gonna jump in and say what I would say to anyone. Biggest at the core of what we do, regardless of all the sort of products that I've mentioned or you're thinking about, of the core is email, and there is no better name in detection than Proofpoint, right? Proofpoint has a multi-decade history of delivering a really strong detection sort of experience for its customers. 2 million of those customers, the majority of the Fortune 100, but also millions of SMBs and tens of thousands of MSPs. So we have the data, we have the experience, and with Total Protection, we are bringing more and more capabilities to market that you may need. Like I said, security awareness, backup, DMARC management. So we're really excited. I think the consolidation story is important because ultimately we believe in that. We think we would be a great vendor for you to look to, and by doing so, you get what I've been talking about, what Matt's been saying, right? One console, one support, one team to work with, one bill, and best in class experience across all these vendors. So we would love for you to check us out.
Awesome. And if you piqued somebody's interest, Chris, where could they go to get more information or to reach out for
Yeah,
more?
great question. And that would be proofpoint total protection.com. Or if you go to proofpoint.com, you'll see a link as well. But proofpoint total protection.com will give you all the information you need. And if you're interested, there's a form you can fill out. We'll go to our team and and they'll reach out to you, and you can have a good conversation, and you can get a demo and see, hey, is this something that I like or not, right? So that's the best place to start.
Awesome. Well, Chris Moores from Proofpoint, thank you so much for joining me today. I thought this was an awesome conversation. I got a lot out of it, and I hope you did, and our audience did as well.
I really appreciate it, Matt. I did as well. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the conversation. Highlight of my day.
Fantastic. Well, folks, you heard the URL. Also put it in the description area below the video. So go and make sure that you check that out. Also, please like the video and subscribe to the Channel Pro Network YouTube channel to get more great videos like this one. Also, please visit channelpronetwork.com for more great news, information, and resources to help you in your business. So thanks to all who joined us today. Like and subscribe, and we will see you next time on Stack Up.